that or respond to that.
Yes.
He raises a very important issue that is from the field of psychology. There's something called the post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD,
Yes.
or what is called the stages of grief theory. That you start off with denial, then you move to anger, then you move to bargaining, and then negotiation, and then lastly acceptance. And what you can see clearly is what is happening with the losing side of these elections. Yes? So that is from a psychological sort of point of view, that something clearly is going on that these guys need help with, and it includes, remember, when you go for therapy, you sit in your seat there and you talk to a therapist and you tell them.
You don't need therapy, is it?
Exactly. All these things are therapeutic. It's part of the therapy, or it is therapeutic in the sense that it helps for people to discuss these issues. We are not saying that there are no problems in this country. There are serious problems. We've always said that. And they're coming from the economic side of things.
Yeah.
That families are really hurting. People are going through stuff. Businesses are shutting down, and so on and so forth. And then you've got a government that keeps on increasing taxes and so on and so on. That's a valid point. But by sitting around a table and discussing those issues that we are discussing at the Bombers of Kenya, we are not saying that they're invalid presentations. These are very, very valid arguments and presentations being made by Kenyans at the Bombers of Kenya. But what we are saying is we are simply giving the government an opportunity to push its agenda, thinking that we are discussing our own issues, but in reality it is government. Because remember, let's go back to the origin or the genesis of the talks. The government pushes for, we start off with maandamano,
yes,
and then they agree to talk. And then you remember the statement that set up the national dialogue or that platform came out on a Sunday, you remember? It came out on a Sunday, and they said these are the 5 issues that we've agreed to discuss. And then there was a huge backlash, and people said, we told you this is all about appeasing one man. Yes, and then of course the opposition came and denied straight away and said, no, we didn't agree to those 5 issues. Actually, we have our own 4 issues, and then they were combined, they became 9, and then of course the talk started, and then, like I said, they were sieved and percolated into 5. And I've always insisted that of these 5 issues, only 2 are real, like proper ones: the embedment of those 2 offices and the funds. The rest of the cost of living, interfering with the other side. Yes?
Yeah.
All those issues are known issues in the sense that the constitution is very, very clear, and what we're pushing for is the rule of law, isn't it? In the general sort of philosophy, isn't it? So how do we work within the constitution, yes, or within the law, to deal with all these problems that we have? Like Nyamambo said, there were very, very beautiful presentations yesterday and the previous days by Kenyans. That is true. But the truth of the matter is, who brought these 2 issues that we are saying, the ones on embedment of the PCS and the leader of opposition?
Yes.
Who brought the issue of NGCDF and so on and so forth?
Yes.
It's the government. So it is true, whilst he makes the argument that government needs these talks more than the opposition, it is true because the substantive issues that are on the table actually favor government side. And that is why we are saying this is a rope given to the opposition to help push the government agenda. So you're sitting there, you're supposed to be in the opposition.
John,
you're supposed to be, let me finish our point.
Yes.
We are supposed to be in opposition, putting the government to account, not to push the government agenda. And that is why we said, we continued with that argument and made the argument that we're going to end up in a referendum somehow. So, are we going to have Azimio and government on one side pushing for that referendum? Because if they were to agree on all those issues, the creation of an official position, it means Azimio and government will be on one side. So who will be on the no side? 1. Number 2, do we have the resources immediately coming out on the back of an election? We know that financially we are not doing well.
Yes.
The president yesterday in the cabinet said government departments must cut 10% of their budget. So how do we navigate those waters? And then lastly, referenda are very, very tricky. And this is the reason why I've been saying this, that there is no way Ruto is going to allow for a referendum in his first term. Kibaki made that mistake in 2005. You see where it ended. David Cameron in England and the Brexit issue. He brought the referendum in 2015. He was thrown out. He was forced to resign because he lost that. So the president is well aware. Remember, he's a sharp guy. He knows these things. He knows Kenyans are hurting. He knows there's a lot of pain up and down the country. Nobody is negating that. It is real. But you put a referendum, the referendum is not going to be about the leader of opposition. It's going to be about my pocket, money in my pocket. And that is why referenda are always tricky, and that's why I've insisted there is no way government will allow for that to happen.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, Fanyamambo raised the issue of the audit, and he talked about Jubilee. We know that those are lies. I want him to revisit in his own free time, to just go and look at what happened in the Supreme Court. All these things were litigated. We got to a point where an embarrassing situation, my namesake, Gedongo, John, he actually tried to walk back on what he had presented about guys intercepting Ninis and so on and so forth. The registrar of the of the Supreme Court carried out an audit of the servers, and they were given access. Njoroge, the guy who was in charge of IT, the consultant for IT for Azimio, gave it, signed it off and said, actually, we agree with all the contents. Everything is fine. So why are we doing this?
Yes.
And then lastly, they are lawyers. There is a concept they use called functus officio. Within the law, all the avenues have been pursued and they've been settled. The Supreme Court has spoken. So why are we doing these things extra constitutional? And then, by extension, what does it mean for all the other many problems that we've got? Are we going to end up with a situation where we say, put the law to one side, the constitution to one side, and then we sit down and say, no, it can't happen. John, if we talk about rule of law, constitutionalism, let's stick with those maxims.
John, I want you to take 2 minutes before I